Camille thought she was being clever by having an affair while her fiancé was away. But when technology betrays her in the worst possible way, she and Mike must stage the most ridiculous cover-up they've ever attempted. While her fiancé waits at home with genuine concern for her well-being, their solution becomes transforming their hotel room into a fake hospital, complete with Mike playing doctor and Camille's dramatic medical emergencies. From fake fainting spells to wheelchair performances, their desperate attempts to maintain the lie become increasingly unhinged. The real question is, how far will they go to avoid telling the truth? It all starts with one fatal mistake that changes everything. The fatal FaceTime mistake. Camille's phone buzzed on the nightstand, displaying her fiancé's name with an incoming FaceTime call. The blood drained from her face as she stared at the screen. This wasn't supposed to happen. Her fiancé was supposed to be at work, not calling for a video chat at 9 in the morning. Mike noticed her panic and reached for the phone, thinking he could help by simply declining the call, but technology had other plans. His finger accidentally swiped the wrong direction, and suddenly her fiancé's face appeared on the screen, smiling and expecting to see his beloved Camille. Instead, he found himself staring at a completely bewildered stranger wearing nothing but a hotel bathrobe. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Mike's mouth opened and closed while his brain completely failed to process what had just happened, his face growing redder by the second. Camille's fiancé blinked several times, clearly confused by this unexpected development. His smile faded as he tried to understand why some random man was holding his girlfriend's phone. Camille crouched behind the device, frantically waving her arms and mouthing instructions to Mike. Her gestures became increasingly desperate as she tried to communicate some kind of escape plan through hand signals. Mike's eyes darted between the screen and Camille's silent coaching, sweat beading on his forehead. The fiancé's voice broke the uncomfortable silence. Hello? Who are you? Where's Camille? His tone carried a mixture of confusion and growing suspicion. Mike's instinct was to immediately hang up and pretend the call never happened, but Camille grabbed his wrist and shook her head vigorously. She knew that ending the call abruptly would only make things worse. Mike cleared his throat and attempted to speak, but only managed to produce a strangled sound. Camille's fiancé leaned closer to his camera, studying Mike's face with increasing concern. "I'm sorry, but I really need to know who you are and why you're answering Camille's phone," he said, his voice becoming more firm and demanding. Camille's mind raced as she tried to think of any plausible explanation for this disaster. She needed something that would justify Mike's presence without revealing their affair. Her eyes scanned the hotel room desperately, looking for inspiration. The white bathrobe Mike was wearing gave her an idea, and she whispered the word hospital so quietly that only Mike could hear. Just as her fiancé opened his mouth to ask another question, the screen froze for a moment, creating a brief pause that felt like an eternity. Mike's face lit up with recognition when he heard Camille's whispered suggestion. A hospital. Of course. That could work. He straightened his shoulders and tried to project an air of professional authority, despite the fact that he was clearly in a hotel room. "Good morning, sir," he said, attempting to sound official and medical. "You don't need to worry about Camille. She's in good hands." Mike realized he'd opened a door he wasn't prepared to walk through, but there was no turning back now. Camille's fiancé's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. Hospital? What hospital? What happened to Camille? Is she hurt? His voice rose with each question, panic creeping into his tone. Mike felt his confidence wavering as he tried to maintain his professional facade while Camille continued her frantic gesturing from behind the phone. She's fine, Mike said, trying to sound reassuring. "Just a minor situation, nothing serious. She's being well taken care of." He paused, realizing he needed to establish his credentials. "I'm her attending physician, by the way, Dr. Flayman." The name came out of nowhere, but Mike committed to it immediately. Camille's fiancé seemed to accept this explanation, though his concern was far from diminished. "Dr. Flayman? What kind of doctor are you? What's wrong with Camille? Can I speak to her?" Mike glanced at Camille for guidance as she made exaggerated movements, pretending to be weak and injured to support their emerging story. "She's resting right now," Mike said. "The medication has made her quite drowsy, but she's stable." "Medication for what?" Camille's fiancé pressed. "You still haven't told me what's wrong. With her or which hospital you're at. I need to come see her immediately." His voice carried the urgency of a man who loved someone deeply and feared for their safety. Mike's mind went blank. He hadn't prepared for specific questions about Camille's condition or their location. Camille could see his panic and tried to mouth suggestions, but he couldn't understand what she was trying to communicate. The silence stretched uncomfortably as Mike struggled to come up with convincing medical details. "Well, you see," Mike began, buying time while he formulated a response. "Camille experienced some complications this morning, nothing life-threatening, but serious enough that we needed to keep her for observation." He was making it up as he went along, hoping that vague medical language would sound authoritative enough to satisfy Camille's fiancé. Camille's fiancé wasn't easily deterred. "Complications from what? And you still haven't told me which hospital." "I'm getting in my car right now." The sound of keys jingling came through the phone, indicating he was serious about his intention to visit. This development sent both Camille and Mike into a new level of panic. If he actually showed up at a hospital looking for Camille, their lie would be exposed immediately. Mike had to think fast to prevent that from happening. "Actually, sir, I'm afraid visitors aren't allowed at the moment," he said, trying to sound official. "We have a security lockdown in effect due to some recent incidents." Camille's fiancé seemed to accept this explanation, though his worry was evident. "Okay, Dr. Flayman, please take good care of her. Can you at least tell her I called and that I love her?" The genuine emotion in his voice made Camille's guilt intensify as she listened to the man she was betraying express his love and concern. Mike nodded solemnly. "Of course, sir. I'll make sure she gets the message." As the immediate crisis seemed to pass, neither of them realized they'd just committed to maintaining an elaborate deception that would only become more complicated with each passing moment. Mike looked at Camille, who was still crouched behind the phone, and realized he was now fully committed to playing the role of Dr. Flayman, the birth of Dr. Mike. The transformation was complete. Mike straightened his shoulders and cleared his throat, attempting to channel every medical drama he'd ever watched. The hotel bathrobe suddenly felt like surgical scrubs in his mind as he committed fully to his new identity. "As I mentioned, Dr. Flayman, Camille's attending physician," he said, his voice gaining confidence with each word. Behind the phone, Camille frantically mouthed medical terms she remembered from television shows, hoping to give Mike some ammunition for his performance. "Camille came in with stomach issues this morning," Mike announced, pleased with himself for sounding official. Camille nodded enthusiastically from her position on the floor, then began making exaggerated sick faces to support his story. The symptoms manifested quite suddenly, which is why she was brought in for immediate evaluation and treatment. Camille's fiancé leaned forward with concern. "Stomach issues? That sounds uncomfortable. What exactly happened?" Mike's confidence wavered slightly as he realized he needed to provide more details. Camille began making stomach-rubbing motions and pointing to her abdomen, trying to help him explain the condition she supposedly had. "Well, she experienced severe nausea and abdominal cramping," Mike said, watching Camille's gestures for guidance. "The dehydration became quite significant, which is why we've got her resting and monitoring her condition." He glanced around the hotel room, hoping nothing in the background would contradict his medical setting claims. Camille's fiancé's worry deepened. Poor Camille. She didn't mention feeling sick yesterday. How long will she need to stay in the hospital? The genuine concern in his voice made Camille wince with guilt, but she continued her silent coaching, now pretending to be weak and drowsy. Mike felt the pressure mounting as he tried to sound authoritative about recovery timelines. "These cases can be unpredictable," he said, attempting to project medical wisdom. "We're monitoring her condition and ensuring proper hydration. She's been quite drowsy from the medication, but we want to keep her under observation for at least another 12 hours. Which hospital are you at?" "I want to send flowers. Maybe stop by during visiting hours," Camille's fiancé asked suddenly. Mike's face went pale as he realized he'd been so focused on the medical terminology that he'd forgotten to establish their supposed location. Camille's eyes widened in panic as she watched Mike's mouth open and close without producing any sound. "We're at St. Mary's Medical Center," Mike said, the words coming out before he could stop them. Camille immediately covered her face with her hands. She knew that St. Mary's was the hospital in her hometown, 3,000 miles away from where they currently were. Camille's fiance's expression shifted to confusion. "St. Mary's? But that's in California. Camille's supposed to be here in New York. How did she end up in a hospital across the country?" "I didn't realize you were on vacation," he added, his tone carrying a hint of surprise mixed with concern. The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Mike's mouth went dry as he realized the magnitude of his error. "Oh, that's right," Mike said, his voice cracking slightly. "She was visiting her aunt, remember? The one in California?" Camille mentioned she was feeling unwell during her flight, and the symptoms got worse after she landed. Her aunt brought her straight to the emergency room. He looked at Camille desperately, hoping she would somehow support this new fabrication. Camille nodded weakly and managed a small wave at the camera. "Hi, honey," she whispered in a raspy voice. "I'm sorry I didn't call sooner. Everything happened so fast." She tried to look as sick as possible, hoping her appearance would distract from the geographical impossibility of their situation. "I'm getting in the car right now," Camille's fiancé announced, grabbing his keys. "I'll catch the next flight to California. You shouldn't be alone in a hospital, especially not across the country." The sound of his determination sent both Camille and Mike into a new wave of panic. If he actually booked a flight and showed up at St. Mary's looking for Camille, their entire deception would collapse immediately. Mike's mind raced as he tried to find a way to prevent this disaster. "Actually, sir, I'm afraid that won't be possible right now," he said, attempting to sound official and regretful. "The hospital has implemented strict visitor restrictions due to a security lockdown. We're only allowing essential personnel and immediate family members who have been cleared by our security team." The mention of security restrictions made Camille's fiancé pause. Security lockdown? What kind of situation? Is Camille safe there? His voice carried both concern for Camille's well-being and confusion about the hospital's policies. Mike realized he'd created yet another complication that would require careful navigation. "It's nothing directly related to Camille's condition," Mike explained, trying to sound reassuring while maintaining the visitor restriction. "The hospital administration is just being extremely cautious. Camille is in a secure wing, completely protected. Her stomach issues are unrelated to the security concerns." Camille began making throat-cutting gestures, trying to signal Mike to stop elaborating, but he was too focused on the phone screen to notice her warnings. "How long will these restrictions last?" her fiancé asked. "I need to be there with her, especially if she's really sick." Mike felt trapped between maintaining the lie and preventing Camille's fiancé from actually traveling to California. "The restrictions should be lifted within the next 24 to 48 hours, he said, hoping that would buy them enough time to figure out their next move. Camille's condition is improving, and she may even be discharged before the restrictions are completely lifted. "I know she's tired, but I just want to hear her voice and make sure she's okay." Mike looked at Camille, who was now sitting up and trying to look appropriately ill while preparing to speak to her fiancé. Camille cleared her throat and spoke in a weak, strained voice. "Hi, baby. I'm okay, just really tired. Dr. Flamin has been taking great care of me." She paused to cough convincingly. "I should be home soon, I promise. The medicine is making me really sleepy, so I might not be able to talk much." Mike watched as Camille performed her illness, impressed by her acting ability but terrified by how deep their deception had become. He successfully established himself as Dr. Flamin, created a fake medical condition, and invented a cross-country hospital visit. Each lie felt more natural than the last, but he knew they were building a house of cards that could collapse at any moment. "Try to rest, sweetheart," her fiancé said softly. "I'll call back later to check on you. Dr. Flamin, please take good care of her. She means everything to me." The love in his voice made both Camille and Mike feel the weight of their deception even more heavily. Mike was beginning to feel confident about their medical charade when he noticed Camille's fiancé's expression suddenly shift, his face brightening with an emotion that looked suspiciously like excitement. The anniversary surprise complication. Oh, honey, I almost forgot the most important thing, he said, his voice filled with anticipation. I know you're not feeling well, but I have the most incredible surprise planned for tonight. Camille's stomach dropped as she watched her fiancé's face light up. With genuine joy. What kind of surprise? Camille asked weakly, though she had a sinking feeling she already knew the answer. Her fiancé had been dropping hints about their anniversary for weeks, but in the chaos of planning her secret rendezvous with Mike, she'd completely pushed it from her mind. Mike continued to stand behind the phone, maintaining his doctor persona while watching the conversation unfold. It's our anniversary, sweetheart, her fiancé said, his smile growing wider. I've been planning this for months. Both our families are coming over to the house at 6 o'clock tonight. Your parents are driving up from Connecticut. My sister is flying in from Boston, and even your grandmother said she wouldn't miss it for the world. The excitement in his voice was infectious, but Camille felt nothing but pure dread. Camille's face went white as the reality of the situation hit her. She had completely forgotten their anniversary. Not only was she betraying her fiancé by having an affair, but she'd also forgotten one of the most important dates in their relationship. The guilt crashed over her like a wave, making her feel genuinely sick for the first time that morning. Oh my God, Camille whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. Honey, I'm so sorry. I completely forgot about our anniversary. This whole hospital thing has me so confused and disoriented. She began coughing dramatically, hoping to buy herself time to think. Mike watched her performance with growing concern, realizing that their simple lie was about to become exponentially more complicated. Camille's fiancé's expression softened with understanding. Don't worry about it, baby. You're sick and scared. Of course you're not thinking clearly. But listen, I need you to get better fast because everyone is so excited to see you tonight. Your mom has been talking about this for weeks. The pressure in his voice was unmistakable, despite his attempts to sound supportive. Mike cleared his throat and stepped back into his role as Dr. Flamin. I'm afraid Camille's condition may require extended observation, he said, trying to sound professional while frantically thinking of medical reasons to keep her away from the anniversary celebration. Her stomach issues have been more severe than we initially anticipated, and we're concerned about potential complications. What kind of complications? Camille's fiancé asked, his celebratory mood quickly shifting to worry. You said she was getting better. Can't she just rest at home? I'll take care of her, and she'll be surrounded by family who love her. The desperation in his voice made Camille's guilt intensify, but she knew she couldn't go home and face their families while Mike was still in the picture. Camille began coughing more violently, clutching her stomach and doubling over in apparent pain. The medicine isn't working, she gasped between coughs. I feel worse than before. Maybe I'm having a reaction to something. Mike immediately picked up on her cue and moved closer to the camera, adopting a concerned medical expression. This is exactly what I was worried about, Mike said, his voice taking on an urgent tone. Camille's showing signs of medication intolerance, which can be quite serious if not properly monitored. We'll need to adjust her treatment protocol immediately and keep her under close medical supervision. He hoped his improvised medical jargon sounded convincing enough to justify extending her hospital stay. Camille's fiancé ran his hands through his hair in frustration. But Dr. Flamin, you don't understand. I've been planning this anniversary celebration for 3 months. I coordinated everyone's schedules, arranged for time off work, ordered special catering. My mother has been preparing Camille's favorite dishes all week. Everyone is going to be so disappointed if she doesn't show up. The emotional weight of his words hit Camille like a physical blow. She could picture their families arriving at the house, bringing flowers and gifts, ready to celebrate their love and commitment. Meanwhile, she was lying in a hotel room with another man, spinning an elaborate web of lies to cover up her betrayal. The contrast between their expectations and her reality made her feel physically ill. I understand this is difficult, Mike said, trying to maintain his professional demeanor while Camille continued her dramatic coughing fit. But Camille's health must be our primary concern. The medication adjustment could take several hours to take effect, and we need to monitor her vital signs carefully. Any stress or excitement could potentially worsen her condition. Camille's fiance leaned closer to the camera, his voice taking on a pleading tone. Camille, honey, please try to get better. Your grandmother is so excited to see you. She's been telling everyone about how proud she is of our relationship. And your parents have been looking forward to this for weeks. They specifically requested time off work to be here tonight. The mention of her grandmother made Camille's eyes fill with genuine tears. Her grandmother had always been her biggest supporter, constantly talking about how perfect Camille and her fiancé were together. The thought of disappointing her, of lying to her face, made Camille's stomach churn with authentic nausea. I want to be there so badly, Camille said, her voice breaking with emotion. But I can barely sit up without feeling dizzy. Dr. Flamin, isn't there anything else you can do? Some stronger medication or treatment that might help me recover faster? She looked at Mike desperately, hoping he could find a way to maintain their lie while addressing the mounting family pressure. Mike shifted uncomfortably, realizing that every medical explanation he provided only created more expectations and complications. We're doing everything we can, he said carefully. But these things take time. Rushing Camille's recovery could lead to a serious relapse, potentially requiring hospitalization for several days instead of just overnight. Camille's fiancé sighed heavily, the weight of disappointing their families clearly wearing on him. Everyone's going to be heartbroken, he said quietly. Your mom has been so excited about tonight. She even bought a new dress specifically for the occasion. And my parents have been bragging to their friends about what a wonderful daughter-in-law you're going to be. The guilt became overwhelming for Camille as she listened to her fiancé describe the elaborate preparations and high expectations surrounding their anniversary celebration. She realized that her selfish decision to have an affair wasn't just affecting her relationship with her fiancé, but was about to disappoint her multiple families who had invested emotionally in their future together. The pressure from her fiancé's anniversary expectations became too much for Camille to handle, staging the medical emergency. She clutched her chest and let out a sharp gasp, her eyes rolling back dramatically as she began to sway on her feet. Mike's eyes widened in confusion as he watched her performance, not immediately understanding what she was trying to accomplish. Camille's fiancé leaned closer to his phone screen, his expression shifting from concern to alarm as he watched his girlfriend appear to struggle for breath. Camille? Camille? What's happening? Her fiancé called out, his voice rising with panic. Camille continued her dramatic display, stumbling backward and making gurgling noises as if she couldn't breathe properly. Mike finally realized what she was doing and jumped into action, though he had no idea how to respond to a fake medical emergency convincingly. Camille threw herself to the floor with a loud thud, her body going completely limp as she pretended to lose consciousness. Her fiancé's voice became frantic as he watched his beloved collapse right before his eyes. Dr. Flamin, what's happening to her? Do something. The genuine terror in his voice made Mike's stomach churn with guilt, but he knew he had to maintain the charade. Mike dropped to his knees beside Camille's motionless form, his hands hovering over her body as he tried to remember anything he'd seen in medical dramas. She's having a severe reaction to the medication, he announced, his voice attempting to sound professional despite his obvious panic. Her breathing has become compromised, and she's lost consciousness. This is exactly what I was worried about. Camille's fiancé watched in horror as Mike began checking for a pulse, pressing his fingers against her neck with exaggerated urgency. Is she breathing? Can you feel a heartbeat? He demanded, his voice cracking with emotion. Mike nodded grimly, though he had no idea what he was actually checking for. Camille remained perfectly still, focusing on keeping her breathing shallow and irregular. Her pulse is weak but present, Mike announced, trying to sound like he knew what he was talking about. I need to begin emergency resuscitation procedures immediately. He positioned his hands on Camille's chest, having seen CPR performed in movies countless times. His technique was completely wrong, but he pumped her chest with dramatic intensity, counting aloud to make it seem more official. Camille had to concentrate on remaining limp while Mike performed his theatrical CPR, his hands pressing against her ribs in a rhythm that bore no resemblance to actual medical procedure. She could hear her fiancé's increasingly frantic voice through the phone, begging Mike to save her life. The guilt of putting him through this emotional torture made her want to end the charade immediately. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mike counted loudly, his compressions becoming more exaggerated with each number. Come on, Camille, stay with me. Don't give up now. He had no idea that real CPR required specific hand placement and pressure, so his dramatic performance looked more like he was trying to wake someone from a deep sleep rather than restart their heart. Camille's fiancé became hysterical as he watched the supposed medical emergency unfold. Call an ambulance right now. She needs real help. This is too serious for just one doctor to handle. His voice was breaking as he pleaded with Mike to get additional medical assistance. Mike's face went pale as he realized this demand would completely expose their deception. No, that's not necessary, Mike said quickly, never stopping his fake CPR compressions. I have everything under control here. The hospital emergency team is already on standby. Calling an outside ambulance would only complicate the situation and delay proper treatment. Camille could hear the desperation in her fiancé's voice as he begged Mike to do more to help her. She had to time her recovery perfectly, making it seem like Mike's intervention was actually working while not prolonging her unconsciousness so long that her fiancé would insist on calling emergency services. The balance was delicate, and she knew one wrong move could destroy everything. Mike continued his dramatic resuscitation efforts, occasionally stopping to check her pulse and breathing. She's responding slightly, he announced, though Camille hadn't moved at all. The medication is beginning to work its way out of her system. I can see some improvement in her vital signs. His completely fabricated medical observations somehow sounded convincing to Camille's terrified fiancé. Is she going to be okay? Camille's fiancé asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Please tell me she's going to be all right. I can't lose her, especially not today of all days. The raw emotion in his voice made Camille's heart ache with guilt. She was putting the man she was supposed to marry through unimaginable anguish just to cover up her affair. Mike could see that Camille's fiancé was on the verge of calling emergency services himself, regardless of Mike's protests. He needed Camille to regain consciousness immediately before their lies spiraled completely out of control. Camille, if you can hear me, try to open your eyes, he said loudly, hoping she would take the cue to begin her recovery. Camille's eyelids fluttered slightly, and she made a small moaning sound. Mike's face lit up with relief as he saw her responding to his fake treatment. There we go. She's coming back to us. Camille, can you hear my voice? You're safe now. The emergency has passed. He helped her sit up slowly, supporting her as she pretended to regain consciousness. Camille asked weakly, her voice barely audible. I remember feeling dizzy, and then everything went black. She looked around with confused eyes, as if she had no memory of the previous few minutes. Mike continued to support her, maintaining his role as the caring physician who had just saved her life. Camille's fiancé was crying with relief as he watched his girlfriend appear to recover from her medical emergency. Oh, thank God, Camille. You scared me so much. I thought I was going to lose you. His voice was thick with emotion as he watched Mike help her stabilize. Camille felt the weight of his love and concern, knowing she was manipulating his deepest fears for her own selfish purposes. Mike looked directly at the camera with a serious expression. She's stable now, but this episode confirms that Camille needs extended medical supervision. Any stress or excitement could trigger another reaction, potentially more severe than this one. His warning effectively eliminated any possibility of Camille attending the anniversary celebration, but it also created new expectations about her critical condition that would be difficult to maintain. As Camille sat on the floor, still pretending to be weak and disoriented, Mike realized the performance had been convincing enough to keep her fiancé from rushing to California. However, he also understood that they had escalated their deception to a level that would require even more elaborate staging to maintain credibility. The wheelchair performance. Mike's eyes scanned the hotel room desperately, searching for inspiration that would justify keeping Camille away from home for several more hours. The anniversary celebration pressure wasn't going away, and her fiancé's determination to visit was growing stronger by the minute. The fall has affected her mobility significantly, Mike announced suddenly, his voice taking on a grave medical tone. Camille's going to need assistance with basic movement for the next few days. We're looking at potential physical therapy requirements depending on how her recovery progresses. Camille caught on immediately, allowing her body to slump as if she couldn't support her own weight. Her fiancé's concern deepened as he watched Camille struggle to sit upright. What kind of mobility issues? Will she need crutches or something? Mike's mind raced as he tried to think of the most convincing medical equipment scenario. His eyes landed on the hotel desk chair, and suddenly, he had what seemed like a brilliant idea. Actually, we're going to need to get Camille set up with a wheelchair temporarily, Mike said, moving toward the chair. The impact has affected her leg strength, and walking isn't safe right now. Let me show you how we're managing her mobility. He began positioning the desk chair closer to where Camille was sitting, hoping the angle would hide its obvious hotel origins. Camille quickly grabbed the bed sheets and blankets, draping them over her legs to create the illusion of medical covering. She positioned herself in the chair while Mike stood behind her, his hands gripping the back as if he were a trained medical professional demonstrating proper wheelchair assistance. The makeshift setup looked questionable at best, but they hoped the camera angle would hide the most obvious flaws. As you can see, Camille requires full assistance for any movement, Mike explained, beginning to push the chair slowly around the small hotel room. Camille let her arms hang limply at her sides, trying to appear weak and dependent. The desk chair's wheels squeaked loudly as Mike maneuvered it, but he pressed on with his demonstration. Camille's fiancé watched with growing alarm as his girlfriend appeared to be completely helpless. How did this happen? You said she had gastroenteritis, but now she can't walk? What kind of fall caused this much damage? His questions came rapidly, each one requiring Mike to invent new details about Camille's fabricated injury. Mike felt sweat beading on his forehead as he tried to maintain his professional demeanor while pushing Camille around in the obviously inadequate chair. Camille experienced a significant fall during her initial medical episode, he explained, the story forming in his mind as he spoke. The combination of her weakened state from the stomach issues and the impact has created this temporary mobility restriction. Where did she fall? I thought she was visiting her aunt, Camille's fiancé said, his voice sharp with confusion. Why was she alone if she was feeling sick enough to need hospitalization? Mike realized he'd created another inconsistency that required immediate explanation. Camille tried to help by speaking in a weak, pained voice. I was trying to get to the bathroom in Aunt Helen's house, she said, her words barely audible. I felt so dizzy and nauseous, and I just lost my balance. The next thing I remember is waking up here. She hoped her performance would distract from the logical gaps in their story. Mike nodded solemnly as he continued pushing the desk chair. Head injuries combined with physical trauma can cause significant confusion about the sequence of events, he said, hoping his medical-sounding explanation would satisfy her fiancé's questions. Camille's memory of the incident is still fragmented, which is completely normal for this type of injury. Will she need surgery? Physical therapy? How long before she can walk normally again? Camille's fiancé's voice carried both love and fear as he watched his girlfriend appear so helpless. Mike had to provide timeline information that would justify her absence while not creating expectations that would be impossible to maintain. The good news is that surgery won't be necessary, Mike said, continuing his slow circuit around the room. We're looking at intensive physical therapy starting tomorrow, with gradual mobility improvement over the next week to 10 days. Camille should be able to return home once we're confident she can navigate basic tasks safely. Camille tried to look appropriately grateful for Mike's care, while secretly directing him with subtle gestures about what to say next. She pointed discreetly toward her right leg, trying to establish which limb was supposedly injured. Mike caught her signal and adjusted his medical explanation accordingly. The right leg took the brunt of the impact, Mike continued, which is why we're being so cautious about weight-bearing activities. Any premature attempt to walk could result in further injury or delayed healing. Camille nodded weakly, trying to remember to favor her right side during the performance. As Mike pushed the chair past the hotel room's small table, Camille instinctively used her supposedly injured right leg to push against the floor, propelling herself forward slightly. The movement was subtle, but completely contradicted everything Mike had just explained about her inability to bear weight. Camille's eyes widened in horror as she realized her mistake. Her fiancé leaned closer to his phone screen, his expression shifting from concern to confusion. "Camille, did you just push yourself with your right leg? I thought Dr. Flamin said that leg was injured and couldn't support weight." The question hung in the air like an accusation, and both Camille and Mike felt their carefully constructed lie beginning to crumble. Mike quickly moved to cover Camille's error. "What you're seeing is actually an involuntary muscle spasm," he said, his voice taking on an urgent tone. "The trauma has caused some neurological responses that can look like intentional movement, but they're actually quite concerning symptoms. Camille, you need to try to keep that leg completely still." Camille immediately went limp again, allowing her right leg to hang motionless from the chair. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was doing that," she said weakly. "Everything feels so strange and disconnected. I can't tell what my body is doing sometimes." Her explanation sounded plausible, but she could see doubt creeping into her fiancé's expression. "These neurological symptoms are exactly why we need to keep Camille under close observation," Mike added, hoping to redirect attention away from the obvious inconsistency. "Any unusual movements or responses need to be carefully monitored to ensure there's no underlying nerve damage from the fall." The wheelchair performance had become increasingly complex, with each medical explanation creating new requirements and expectations. Mike continued pushing Camille around the room, but both of them knew their improvised medical theater was becoming harder to maintain with each passing minute. As he maneuvered the squeaking desk chair around the cramped hotel room, neither of them noticed the sound of footsteps approaching in the hallway outside their door. The real doctor arrives. A knock at the door interrupted Mike's wheelchair demonstration. Both he and Camille froze as they heard the sound, assuming it was just hotel housekeeping or another guest passing by. Mike continued explaining Camille's supposed mobility issues to her fiancé, completely unaware that their elaborate deception was about to face its greatest challenge yet. The hotel room door had been left slightly open for better airflow, and through the gap, a tall man in a white coat became visible in the hallway. He paused outside their room, his head tilted as if listening to something that had caught his attention. Mike's voice carried clearly through the door as he continued his medical monologue about Camille's fabricated condition. "As I mentioned, I'm Dr. Flamin, and Camille's recovery will require careful monitoring," Mike was saying when the man in the white coat suddenly appeared in their doorway. The actual doctor's face showed complete confusion as he stared at Mike, who was still standing behind Camille's makeshift wheelchair setup. Camille's fiancé could see the new figure in the background of the video call, and his expression shifted from concern to puzzlement. "Dr. Flamin, there's another doctor behind you. Who is that?" The question sent ice through both Camille and Mike's veins as they realized their worst nightmare was unfolding in real time. The real Dr. Flamin stepped fully into the room, his white coat and hospital identification badge clearly visible. His voice carried the authority of someone who had spent years in actual medical practice. "Excuse me, but I couldn't help overhearing someone using my name. I'm Dr. Flamin from City General Hospital, and I'm wondering why you're claiming to be me." Mike's face went completely white as he stared at the actual doctor. His mouth opened and closed without producing any sound, his brain failing to process this impossible situation. Camille remained frozen in the desk chair, her eyes darting between Mike and the real doctor as she tried to figure out how to salvage their collapsing deception. "Two doctors," Camille's fiancé said, his voice rising with confusion. "Why are there two doctors there? And why do you both have the same name?" His questions came rapidly, each one making the situation more impossible to explain. The real Dr. Flamin stepped closer to Mike, his expression growing more serious as he began to understand what was happening. Mike's survival instincts kicked in as he tried to maintain some semblance of their lie. "Oh, this is my colleague, Dr. Flamin," he said, his voice cracking with obvious panic. We worked together at the hospital. Same name, different specialties. What a coincidence, right? His explanation sounded desperate even to his own ears, but he hoped it might buy them a few seconds to think. The real Dr. Flamon's eyes narrowed as he studied Mike's hotel bathroom and the obviously fake medical setup. Colleague? I've never seen you before in my life. And this certainly isn't a hospital room. Are you seriously impersonating a doctor? His voice carried both professional outrage and genuine concern about the implications of what he was witnessing. Camille's fiancé was now leaning very close to his phone screen, trying to understand the increasingly bizarre scene unfolding before him. I'm confused. Which one of you is actually Camille's doctor? And why does this look like a hotel room instead of a hospital? His questions hit like hammer blows, each one exposing another flaw in their elaborate deception. Mike began making frantic gestures toward Camille, trying to signal that she needed to create some kind of distraction. The real Dr. Flamon was studying the hotel room's obvious features, his medical training making him acutely aware of how nothing about their setup resembled actual medical care. This is completely fraudulent, he said, his voice growing stern. Impersonating a medical professional is a serious criminal offense. Camille realized she needed to act immediately before their entire lie exploded completely. She allowed her body to go limp in the desk chair, her eyes rolling back as she began to slide toward the floor. I'm feeling dizzy again, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Everything's going black. She hoped her renewed medical emergency would redirect everyone's attention away from the doctor impersonation crisis. Mike immediately shifted into his fake medical mode, catching Camille as she pretended to faint. She's having another episode, he announced, trying to sound professional while the real doctor watched his performance with obvious skepticism. The stress of the situation is causing her condition to deteriorate rapidly. The real Dr. Flamon stepped forward, his medical instincts overriding his anger about the impersonation. If she's actually having a medical emergency, I need to examine her immediately. Move aside and let me assess her condition properly. His authoritative tone made it clear that he wasn't going to be dismissed or ignored. Camille's fiancé watched in growing alarm as what appeared to be two medical professionals argued over his girlfriend's care. Someone please just help her. I don't care which one of you is the real doctor. Just make sure Camille is okay. His voice carried the desperation of someone watching a loved one in crisis while being powerless to help. Mike found himself in an impossible position, trying to maintain his fake doctor persona while preventing the real doctor from examining Camille and exposing their deception. I have her medical history and treatment protocol, he said, attempting to sound authoritative. Any intervention from outside personnel could interfere with her established care plan. The real Dr. Flamon's patience was rapidly running out. I'm calling security right now, he said, reaching for his phone. This is clearly a fraudulent medical situation, and I'm concerned about potential harm to this woman. Impersonating a doctor is illegal, and I'm reporting this immediately. His threat to involve authorities sent both Camille and Mike into a new level of panic. Camille's fiancé could hear the real doctor's threats through the phone, and his confusion was turning into genuine alarm. What's happening there? Are you really not in a hospital? Camille, wake up and tell me what's going on. His voice carried both fear for Camille's safety and growing suspicion about the truth of their situation. Mike made one last desperate attempt to convince the real doctor to leave him alone. Please, just give me 5 minutes to explain this situation, he said, his voice taking on a pleading tone. There are circumstances here that you don't understand. If you'll just let me finish this call, I can explain everything afterward. The real Dr. Flamon shook his head firmly. I'm not leaving until I understand exactly what's happening here and ensure that no one is being harmed by this deception. His presence in the room made it impossible for Mike to continue his charade, but Camille's fiancé was still watching through the phone, expecting medical explanations that would somehow make sense of the chaos unfolding before him. Mike realized their wheelchair performance wasn't convincing enough to maintain credibility in front of an actual medical professional. The leg cast catastrophe. In his desperation to create more convincing evidence, Mike's eyes darted around the hotel room until they landed on the white towels hanging in the bathroom. The idea struck him as brilliant in his panic state. "We need to show him the cast," Mike whispered urgently to Camille while her fiancé was momentarily distracted by the real doctor's presence. Camille nodded, understanding immediately that they needed concrete visual evidence of her fabricated injury. Mike rushed to the bathroom and grabbed several white towels, along with a pillowcase that he thought might help create a more realistic medical appearance. "Camille's going to need to show you her leg cast," Mike announced to her fiancé, trying to regain control of the situation. The x-rays confirmed a significant fracture in her right leg, which is why we've had to immobilize it completely. He began wrapping the white towels around Camille's leg, attempting to create something that might resemble actual medical casting material. Camille watched nervously as Mike worked, trying to remember which leg was supposedly injured. The stress of maintaining their deception while dealing with the real doctor's presence had scrambled her memory of their earlier lies. She was almost certain Mike had mentioned her right leg, but as he began wrapping the towels, she noticed he was working on her left leg instead. "The cast needs to extend from her ankle to just below the knee," Mike explained to Camille's fiancé, his voice taking on what he hoped sounded like professional authority. "The fracture was severe enough that we needed to immobilize the entire lower leg to ensure proper healing." He wrapped the pillowcase around the towels, trying to create a smooth, cast-like appearance. Camille's fiancé leaned closer to his phone screen, studying the makeshift cast with growing curiosity. "It looks different from the casts I've seen before," he said carefully. "The material seems unusual, and the color isn't quite right. Are you sure this is the standard type of cast for leg fractures?" Mike tried to sound confident as he explained the casting materials. "We use a newer type of fiberglass material here," he said, though he had no idea what actual medical casts were made of. "It's lighter and more breathable than the old plaster casts, which helps with patient comfort during the healing process." Camille nodded weakly, trying to support his explanation while secretly signaling that he was working on the wrong leg. "But didn't you say the fracture was in her right leg?" Camille's fiancé asked, his voice carrying a note of confusion. "It looks like you're putting the cast on her left leg instead." The observation sent a wave of panic through both Camille and Mike as they realized their fundamental error. Mike's hands froze in the middle of wrapping the towels, his mind racing to find an explanation. Camille tried to subtly shift her position, moving her legs to make it appear as though Mike was working on the correct limb. "Everything feels so confusing," she said weakly. "The pain medication makes it hard to tell which leg is which sometimes." She hoped her explanation would cover for their obvious mistake, but the repositioning looked awkward and unnatural on camera. Mike attempted to salvage the situation by claiming the cast needed to be adjusted. "We actually need to reposition the cast," he said, beginning to unwrap the towels. The initial placement wasn't providing adequate support for the fracture site. He moved to Camille's right leg, trying to transfer the makeshift cast to the correct limb while maintaining his professional demeanor. The towels and pillowcase looked even less convincing as Mike tried to re-wrap them around Camille's right leg. The material bunched up awkwardly, creating lumps and uneven surfaces that bore no resemblance to actual medical casting. Camille's fiancé watched the entire process with growing skepticism, his expression shifting from concern to suspicion. "The cast keeps changing shape," Camille's fiancé observed, his voice becoming more pointed. "And why does it look so loose? I thought medical casts were supposed to be tight and secure." His questions highlighted the obvious flaws in their improvised medical equipment, making it harder for Mike to maintain his authoritative facade. Mike tried to explain the casting inconsistencies with more fabricated medical jargon. "We use a specialized wrapping technique that allows for swelling," he said, though the towels were clearly too loose to provide any real support. "The cast needs to accommodate tissue expansion while still maintaining proper immobilization of the fracture site." Camille watched his performance with growing anxiety, knowing their deception was becoming more transparent by the minute. As Mike finished wrapping the towels around her right leg, Camille instinctively shifted her weight to get more comfortable in the desk chair. Without thinking, she pressed down with her supposedly broken leg, using it to push herself into a better position. The movement was natural and automatic, but it completely contradicted everything Mike had said about her inability to bear weight on the injured limb. Camille's fiancé's eyes widened as he watched her use her cast-covered leg to move herself. "Camille, you just put your full weight on your broken leg," he said, his voice sharp with suspicion. "If it's really fractured, Shouldn't that be incredibly painful? And why are you able to move it so easily? His questions hit like accusations, exposing the fundamental flaws in their medical charade. Mike jumped in quickly to explain Camille's movement. What you're seeing is actually a positive sign, he said, though his voice lacked conviction. The cast is providing enough support that Camille can bear some weight, which indicates the healing process is progressing better than expected. His explanation sounded desperate, even to his own ears. The real Dr. Flamen, who had been quietly observing their performance, shook his head in disgust. That's not how fractures work, he said firmly. She truly had a broken leg severe enough to require casting. Weight-bearing would be extremely painful and potentially dangerous to the healing process. His medical expertise made their deception even more obviously fraudulent. Camille's fiancé sat back in his chair, his expression now showing clear doubt about everything he'd been told. Something isn't right here, he said slowly. The cast looks fake. Camille's using her supposedly broken leg, and now there are two doctors who can't agree on anything. His voice carried a weight of growing realization as he studied the scene before him more carefully. The house surprised revelation. The doubt in her fiancé's voice prompted him to shift tactics completely, his expression transforming from suspicion to excitement as he prepared to share something he'd been saving for their special day. You know what? Forget about all this medical stuff for a minute, he said, his tone becoming warmer and more intimate. I have something incredible to tell you that I've been saving for today. Something that's going to change our entire future together. His face lit up with genuine joy, the kind that comes from having wonderful news to share with someone you love deeply. Camille felt her stomach clench with dread as she watched her fiancé's expression shift from doubt to pure happiness. She had no idea what he was about to reveal, but his demeanor suggested something significant. Mike continued standing awkwardly beside her makeshift wheelchair, still trying to maintain his doctor persona despite the increasingly surreal situation. Camille, honey, I know you're not feeling well, but I need to tell you about the most amazing anniversary surprise. Her fiancé continued, his voice filled with emotion. I've been working on this for months, coordinating with both our families, and I finally got everything sorted out yesterday. You're going to be absolutely shocked when you hear what my mother has done for us. The mention of his mother made Camille's guilt intensify. She had always loved her fiancé's mother, who had welcomed her into the family with open arms and treated her like a daughter. The thought of disappointing this woman who had shown her nothing but kindness made her feel physically sick in a way that had nothing to do with her fabricated illness. My mom has been watching us together for the past 2 years, her fiancé said, his voice becoming more emotional. She's seen how happy we make each other, how perfect we are as a couple. She keeps telling everyone that she's never seen me smile as much as I do when I'm with you. And because of that, she's decided to do something absolutely incredible for our anniversary. Camille's hands began to shake as she listened to her fiancé's words. The genuine love and admiration in his voice made her realize the magnitude of what she was destroying through her affair with Mike. This wasn't just about their relationship anymore. It involved families, futures, and the kind of deep, committed love that most people spend their entire lives searching for. Mike watched uncomfortably as Camille's fiancé continued his emotional revelation. He could see genuine tears forming in Camille's eyes, and he knew they weren't part of her medical performance. These were real tears, born from real guilt and genuine regret. He began to wonder if their affair was worth the incredible pain it was causing everyone involved. Camille, my mother is buying us a house, her fiancé announced, his voice breaking slightly with emotion. She's purchasing a beautiful home for us as an anniversary gift. It's got 4 bedrooms, a huge kitchen, and the most amazing garden you've ever seen. She wants us to have the perfect place to start our married life together. The words hit Camille like a physical blow? A house. His mother was buying them an actual house. The generosity of the gesture was so overwhelming that Camille couldn't process it immediately. She stared at her fiancé through the phone screen, her mouth opening and closing without producing any sound. This wasn't just a gift, it was an investment in their future, a statement of faith in their relationship. I know it's a lot to take in, her fiancé continued, misinterpreting her shocked silence as being overwhelmed by the surprise. When she told me yesterday, I could barely believe it myself. She said that seeing us together has convinced her that we're meant to be, and she wants to give us the foundation to build our life on. The house is already purchased, honey. It's ours.
Camille's tears began flowing freely now, but not from joy. The weight of her betrayal felt crushing as she realized what she was throwing away for her affair with Mike. This wasn't just about losing her fiancé anymore. It was about destroying the dreams and investments of an entire family who believed in their love.
Mike shifted uncomfortably, clearly struggling to maintain his medical charade while watching Camille's genuine emotional breakdown. There's just one small condition, her fiancé said, his voice taking on a slightly nervous tone. My mother wants us to get married within the month. She says that if we're going to live in the house, we need to make our commitment official. I know it's sooner than we originally planned, but Camille, I can't imagine anything I want more than to marry you as soon as possible. The marriage timeline sent another wave of panic through Camille's system. 1 month. They wanted her to marry her fiancé in 1 month, while she was sitting in a hotel room with her lover, participating in an elaborate deception that was destroying everything good in her life. The irony felt like some kind of cosmic punishment for her choices. Mike tried to maintain his doctor persona while watching Camille's emotional crisis unfold. Perhaps we should let Camille rest, he suggested weakly, hoping to end the conversation before their lives became even more complicated. This level of emotional excitement might not be good for her recovery. His words sounded hollow, even to his own ears, especially as he watched Camille struggle with genuine grief. No, I need to hear what Camille thinks about this, her fiancé said firmly. This is the most important decision we'll ever make together. Camille, honey, I know you're sick, but I need to know how you feel about the house and about moving up our wedding timeline. This is our chance to have everything we've ever dreamed of. Camille looked directly at her fiancé through the camera, seeing the love and hope in his eyes, the excitement about their future together. She thought about the house his mother had purchased, the wedding they were planning, the life they could build together. Then she looked at Mike, standing awkwardly in his hotel bathrobe, representing the selfish choices that had brought her to this moment of crisis. I don't know what to say, Camille whispered, her voice barely audible. It's so generous, so incredible. I never expected anything like this. Her tears continued to flow, but her fiancé interpreted them as joy rather than guilt, smiling warmly as he watched what he believed was his girlfriend being overwhelmed by happiness. The house revelation had transformed their deception from a simple cover-up into something far more devastating. The elaborate lies now felt not just unnecessary but actively cruel, and Camille could feel the weight of her choices pressing down on her with unbearable force. The confession moment. Camille stared at her fiancé's face through the phone screen, seeing the pure joy and excitement in his eyes as he talked about their future together. The contrast between his happiness and her betrayal felt unbearable. Her hands trembled as she gripped the sides of the desk chair, her fake cast suddenly feeling like a physical representation of all the lies she'd constructed. Mike watched Camille's face transform from panic to something much deeper and more dangerous. He could see the genuine remorse building in her expression, the way her eyes filled with real tears that had nothing to do with their medical charade. This wasn't acting anymore. This was a woman confronting the reality of what she'd destroyed, and Mike realized with growing alarm that she might actually tell the truth. Camille, you look like you want to say something, her fiancé said gently, his voice filled with love and concern. I know this is a lot to process, especially when you're not feeling well. But I can see something in your eyes. What are you thinking about? His intuitive reading of her emotional state made Camille's resolve waver even more dangerously. Camille's mouth opened slightly, the words forming in her throat before she could stop them. The urge to confess felt overwhelming, like a physical pressure building inside her chest. The house gift represented everything good about their relationship, everything she was throwing away for her selfish choices. How could she accept such generosity while lying to his face? How could she marry him knowing what she'd done? Mike stepped closer to the camera, his voice taking on an urgent medical tone. Camille's emotional state is quite fragile right now, he said quickly, trying to interrupt the dangerous direction of the conversation. The medication can cause intense emotional reactions, including confusion and inappropriate responses to good news. Perhaps we should continue this conversation when she's more stable. No, let her talk, Camille's fiancé said firmly, his eyes never leaving Camille's face. I know my girlfriend, and I can tell when something's bothering her. Camille, honey, you look like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. Is there something else going on that you haven't told me about? His direct question cut through Camille's defenses like a knife. The silence stretched between them as Camille struggled with her conscience. Mike could see her internal battle playing out across her face, the war between her guilt and her fear of losing everything. He needed to create a distraction before she said something that would destroy all their lives. His eyes darted around the room, searching for any excuse to interrupt the moment. Mike grabbed his phone from the hotel dresser and pretended to answer an incoming call, his voice taking on professional urgency. Dr. Flamen here. Yes, I see. How critical is the situation? I'll be right there. He looked at Camille's fiancé apologetically. I'm sorry, but there's an emergency in the cardiac unit. I need to step away for just a moment. Camille's fiancé watched Mike's supposed emergency call with growing suspicion. Something about the timing felt too convenient, too perfectly positioned to interrupt Camille's moment of vulnerability. Camille, before the doctor comes back, I need you to look at me and tell me honestly if there's something you're hiding from me. I can see it in your eyes, and I need to know what's wrong. The direct confrontation made Camille's guilt intensify exponentially. She looked at her fiancé's face, seeing the trust and love in his expression, knowing she was about to shatter his world. The house his mother had bought them represented dreams and futures that would be destroyed by her confession, but the weight of her deception felt too heavy to carry any longer. Mike returned from his fake phone call, but he could see that Camille was on the verge of breaking down completely. Her composure was cracking, and he knew that his medical charade couldn't distract from the emotional crisis she was experiencing. He watched helplessly as Camille stared at her fiancé through the camera, her internal struggle becoming more visible with each passing second. The anniversary celebration, the house, your mother's generosity, Camille said slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't deserve any of it. I don't deserve you. Her words carried the weight of genuine remorse, but her fiancé interpreted them as emotional overwhelm rather than confession. Mike felt his stomach drop as he realized she was building toward revealing everything. Camille's fiancé leaned closer to his camera, his voice gentle but persistent. Camille, you're scaring me. You keep saying things that don't make sense. Why don't you deserve the house? Why don't you deserve me? We love each other. We're building a life together. What could possibly make you feel unworthy of happiness? His questions pushed Camille closer to the edge of confession. The real Dr. Flamen had been quietly observing their interaction, and even he could sense the emotional intensity building in the room. Mike shot him desperate looks, hoping he would remain silent during this critical moment. Camille's internal battle was becoming more obvious, and Mike knew that one wrong word could trigger a complete breakdown of the reception. Camille took a deep breath, her eyes filling with tears as she looked directly at her fiancé through the camera. The weight of the house gift, the anniversary celebration, and his unwavering love felt crushing. She could see Mike's panic in her peripheral vision, but her need to unburden herself was becoming stronger than her fear of consequences. I need to tell you something important, she began, her voice steady despite her tears. The words hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Mike's face went white as he realized Camille was about to destroy everything they'd worked to hide. Her fiancé's expression shifted from concern to alarm as he sensed the gravity of what she was about to reveal. The real Dr. Flamen watched with professional curiosity as the situation reached its breaking point. Camille's confession was poised on the edge of her lips, ready to unravel their elaborate web of lies and expose the truth about her affair. The moment represented the highest tension point in their deception, where everything could collapse with a single sentence. Mike held his breath, knowing that the next few seconds would determine whether their charade survived or exploded into devastating honesty. Camille's mouth was opening to form the words that would change everything. The final unraveling. Her fiancé's attention suddenly shifted as his eyes narrowed, focusing on something behind her in the camera frame. The hotel room's large mirror had been reflecting their entire charade, and now it betrayed them in the most devastating way possible. He could see Mike's reflection clearly, along with the unmistakable hotel furniture and decor that surrounded them. "Wait a minute," her fiancé said slowly, his voice taking on a dangerous edge. "Camille, I can see a mirror behind you. That's not a hospital room. Those are hotel curtains, and that's a hotel bed. What the hell is going on?" His voice rose with each word as the reality of their deception began to sink in. The fake medical emergency, the elaborate lies, everything was crumbling in real time. Mike's face went completely white as he realized their fatal mistake. All their careful positioning, all their medical theatrics, and they'd been undone by a simple reflection. "Sir, I can explain this," he stammered, but his fake doctor persona was dissolving before their eyes. The hotel bathrobe that had seemed like scrubs now looked ridiculous and obvious. Camille's fiancé leaned closer to his phone screen, his expression shifting from confusion to fury. "You're in a hotel room, both of you. And you've been lying to me for hours about hospitals and doctors and medical emergencies." His voice cracked with emotion as he processed the magnitude of their betrayal.
"Camille, who is this man? And why have you been lying to me?"
The elaborate web of lies they'd constructed began collapsing like a house of cards. Mike tried desperately to maintain some version of their story. "This is a medical facility attached to the hotel," he said weakly, but even he could hear how pathetic his explanation sounded. "Sometimes hospitals use hotel rooms for overflow patients during busy periods." "Stop lying to me," Camille's fiancé shouted, his composure finally breaking completely. "I can see the hotel logo on the towels. I can see the hotel furniture. There's no medical equipment anywhere. You've been making fools of me for hours." His voice carried the pain of someone who'd been thoroughly deceived by the person he trusted most. Camille watched her fiancé's face transform from love to devastation, and she couldn't maintain the charade any longer. The weight of the house gift, the anniversary celebration, and his unwavering trust made her guilt unbearable. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. You're right. We're in a hotel room. I've been lying to you about everything." The confession hit her fiancé like a physical blow. He sat back in his chair, his mouth opening and closing as he tried to process what he'd just heard. Everything? The hospital, the doctor, the injuries, all of it was lies? His voice was barely audible, filled with disbelief and heartbreak. "But why? Why would you do this to me?" Mike realized that Camille was about to reveal their affair, and he made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "Look, this isn't what it looks like," he said quickly. "Camille called me because she was having a panic attack about the anniversary. I'm actually a therapist, and I was trying to help her through her anxiety. The hospital story was just to give her time to calm down. But Camille was beyond caring about protecting their secret anymore. The lies had become too heavy to carry, and her fiancé's pain was too real to ignore. "No, Mike, stop," she said firmly. "I can't do this anymore. He deserves the truth." She looked directly at her fiancé through the camera, her voice breaking with emotion. "I've been having an affair. Mike isn't a doctor or a therapist. He's someone I've been seeing behind your back." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Her fiancé's face went through a series of emotions, from shock to disbelief to crushing heartbreak. "An affair?" he repeated, his voice hollow. "You're having an affair? And you've been lying to me about it for hours while I worried about your health?" The real Dr. Flamen, who had been watching their drama unfold, shook his head in disgust. "This is exactly what I suspected," he said to Mike. "You've been using my identity to cover up adultery. This is despicable behavior from both of you." His professional outrage added another layer of humiliation to their exposed deception. Camille's fiancé began to laugh, but it was a bitter, broken sound. "Do you realize what you've done?" he asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "My mother bought us a house. Our families are waiting at home to celebrate our anniversary. Everyone believes we're building a life together, and you've been lying to my face while sleeping with another man." The anniversary celebration waiting at home became a cruel reminder of everything Camille had destroyed. Her fiancé's voice broke as he spoke.
Everyone's going to be there in a few hours. Your parents, my family, your grandmother who's so proud of our relationship. What am I supposed to tell them? That you were too busy cheating on me to remember our anniversary? Camille's guilt intensified as she realized the full scope of her betrayal. I forgot about the anniversary, she admitted, her voice barely audible. I was so focused on sneaking around that I forgot the most important day of our relationship. I'm sorry doesn't even begin to cover what I've done to you. The strain of their exposed deception immediately created tension between Camille and Mike. This is your fault, Mike said to Camille, his own panic making him defensive. You're the one who wanted to create all these elaborate lies instead of just telling him the truth from the beginning. Their partnership in deception was crumbling into mutual blame and recrimination. Camille's fiancé watched their relationship deteriorate in real time, seeing how quickly their supposed connection dissolved under pressure. You deserve each other, he said with bitter finality. You're both liars and cheaters. I hope you're happy together because you've lost everything else. His words carried the weight of absolute judgment and dismissal. The elaborate medical charade that had seemed so clever just hours earlier now appeared pathetic and cruel. Every fake symptom, every staged emergency, every lie had been designed to manipulate someone who loved Camille unconditionally. The house gift, the anniversary celebration, and the planned wedding all became symbols of the trust and future she destroyed through her selfish choices. What had started as a simple mistake had transformed into something far more damaging than the original transgression. The aftermath revealed the true cost of their choices. Camille and Mike's desperate attempts to avoid a simple truth created damage far beyond what a basic confession would have caused. Their elaborate medical charade transformed a moment of weakness into calculated emotional torture for someone who loved Camille completely. The fake emergencies, wheelchair performances, and doctor impersonations turned their affair into something actively cruel rather than just selfish. Modern technology exposes secrets faster than ever before, leaving people with stark choices. Camille could have faced the consequences honestly when that FaceTime call connected, but instead chose increasingly desperate lies that multiplied the hurt exponentially. Sometimes the cover-up becomes worse than the crime itself.